Welcome to Chalk Talk. We're mixing it up a bit here for the Travellers Championship. That's right, Ben Everill here. But Chris Breese is on the ground at TPC River Highlands, and he's going to give us all the ins and outs for all your chalk bets and how you're going to go about it. Chrissy boy, you're there. What's going on?
Versatility here on Golfbet. Usually you're the one walking the fairway, Ben. And you know what I've kind of realized about being on the grounds here in Connecticut at TPC River Highlands? And previous winners really would dictate this as well. Anybody can win on this course. I mean, I don't think there's anything about this place that is tricked up. It's all straightforward. I don't see any specific kind of skill set being a key to victory when it comes to how you hit the ball off the tee. It's all going to be how you make putts. And what I'm actually doing right now is I'm walking this stretch of 15, 16, 17, and 18. It's a TPC staple. They got this big pond kind of circling all three of these holes, 15, 16, and 17, and you got to hit great approach shots. That's what it's all about here. Then we talked about that approach range from 125 to 150, maybe 150 to 175. It's going to be those guys who hone in on that stat, who I think still do think here, 3 days into this, that's probably going to be the difference, your approach game with your wedges in specific.
Now, I want to talk about also, we've been sitting here chatting about it Monday, Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday. Have you noticed anyone tired? Is anyone just gassed, lying down on
Everyone's talking about it. No, they are talking about it. No one's laying down. No one's visibly gassed. Look, all these guys know that's a storyline. Collin Morikawa said he's on 10 out of 12 weeks.
Wow.
When we just talked to him a little bit ago. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these guys. I'm not going to go as far as saying somebody who's younger like Collin has a better chance than somebody who's, quote, older like Keegan Bradley, who clearly didn't have that be a problem last year. So, again, so many different ranges of winners here. I really do think what you were saying earlier in the week is pretty spot on with guys who maybe weren't exactly in the mix Sunday late at the U.S. Open, just because their mind, I don't care if you're 24 or 44, their mind, whether it's still looking back at that or it's fatigued from that, you got to wonder when you're hitting 260 shots over 4 days, what that's going to do to you, just the little details. So, you know, you look at guys like Patrick Cantlay. How's he going to do? He's the horse for the course here, right, Ben? How's he going to do? Schauffele's not too far behind him either. You can talk about Morikawa and Scheffler. All these guys, it makes you wonder, you know, little details in their game, are they going to be good enough?
It's important, too, to remember, and you've just mentioned it, walking out there, that stretch you're on, you have to make birdies. It's a birdie fest. You can't just sit there and try to ease your way into this contest. You're going to need to go super low, or at least relatively low each day. You know, you're looking at 4 or 5 under a round if you want to be a winner here, unless the conditions get really tough. So with that in mind, any sort of fatigue, mental or physical, you've got to get through it. You've got to push through it. You've got to go low. Otherwise, you're forcing yourself to put up a 60 or a 61 in one of your rounds. And that's easier said than done, even though it's possible there. We've seen a 58. We've seen certainly low numbers. But you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to do it, right, Chris?
Yeah, and that's the case. I mean, you're looking at 15 here. You gotta go birdie here 3 out of 4 days, or you're probably losing strokes to the field. But that's the reality. And then you turn around, you can probably hear the wind behind you, Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's going to be windy here, there's going to be some serious places where you could have trouble. I mean, this tee shot on 16, straight into the wind right now. You can see the little pond, the waves coming right at me. That's all carry over water. The wind slips right back to you, towards the water. There's plenty of birdie holes, but there's plenty of holes where you can get into some serious trouble. So again, it's those little details. I know we want to talk about how these stars have done, you know, the last handful of weeks and how they do the week after a major. And I know you have those stats.
Right, we're going to look at it. Well, what I'm going to look at here is the anomaly we've got where we've gone signature event major into this signature event, right? So it's 3 weeks on the trot, or 3 weeks in a row. So I went back and looked at our chalk guys and saw how often have they played 3 weeks in a row this season, and what have they done in that third week. Well, the first guy, the pre-tournament favourite, Scottie Scheffler, he hasn't even done it this season. has not
I was going to
played.
say, he hasn't done it.
He's not played
Yeah.
3 weeks in a row this year. And the last time he did do it was the playoffs. Obviously, that happens to all the guys who make it through to the Tour Championship. And he fell apart at the Tour Championship T6. And that happened the year before that. He fell apart at the Tour Championship playing 3 weeks in a row. So, look, I'm not saying that he can't win this week, but I'm saying that if you're thinking about getting on him at the 350, 400 that we're seeing, that is dangerous territory for Scottie Scheffler this week. You know, he's not a proven. He's not a proven performer on the third week of a big run, and he's been talking about fatigue more than anyone.
Yeah, I don't even think you have to go as far as saying not a proven performer. I mean, I think we can just leave it at having a historic Formula One stretch. I don't care. Not even Tiger Woods kept that up after a handful of months. There's going to be a week or two where you're not going to be at the top. I could absolutely see this being a continuation of what we saw last week. Does it mean that Scheffler's game is going downhill? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It just means you've got so much competition. And yes, it is a smaller field, but it's the best field. You're getting the best players in the world. I don't care if it's 70 guys or 150 guys. All these players are so good out here this week. And just because Scheffler has a bad week, it's due to happen. Bad for him is T15,
Right.
T12. So if you really want to bet on Scheffler, don't look at the outright market. I think you really got to look at, if you want to do top 10, if he's maybe lurking on the leaderboard for a top 5, look at that. But if you're going to be in the 300s and the 400s, this is stupid. I mean, we say it so many times. No point in betting on Scottie Scheffler this week, whether he wins or not.
Yes, 100%. You said what we can go with this here is it's a live bet option. You got to sit there and wait for him because you watch it. Essentially what we're saying is at some point during this tournament, he's going to be using his B game and perhaps even C+ game. Now that's still good enough to win some weeks on the PGA Tour. But whether or not he has a lull that lets others get a big gap on him, that's when you have to factor that sort of thing in, and that's when you're going to get a better number. I think you're right. I think that the place markets after the first round say, if he falls back, if he's sitting at, he shoots 2 or 3 under and someone's gone out there with a 7 or 8, that's when you might get some juice on him finishing in the top 5 or top 10, and you can reload if you feel like what you've seen is he's had his bad round and now you're going to crack on and see how he goes. But I could see him just sort of letting his B game flow this week, letting it see where he ends up. And if he ends up in the mix, then he'll step it up if he has a chance to win. If not, he'll conserve some energy along the way, and then he'll gear up again for the Scottish and the British Open, in my opinion. Let's move down to the other 4 guys, right, that are on the top. We talked about players who play 3 in a row and what they've done. So you want to go to Xander. Well, for him, he did it 3 times already this year. And on the third week, was at Pebble. He was T54, so not really in the mix. Valspar was another 3rd week in a row. He was 5th there, so he proved that he could be in contention. And the Zurich was another one, which it's kind of a hard one to sort of suggest if that's as.
We'll count it because he played. Yes, he had to play 4 rounds.
So that was T23. So look, two of the 3 times when he played a 3rd week in a row, he did not do so well. Does that worry you about Xander?
I would say no, because there's something about Xander's game right now where it almost feels like he still feels he has something to prove. I don't know how you could make that assumption based off what he did at the PGA Championship, but it almost feels like he still has that chip on his shoulder. And I mean, look, he had a chance at the U.S. Open. I mean, he was right there, put himself into contention on that second day when you thought he was way throwing himself out of it. You can't ignore him winning here 2 years ago, where I think 2 years ago, if you look at his numbers, it was when he just started to turn his game around from what he thought it was going to be, call it a lull or a slump for whatever Xander wants to call a slump. But for Schauffele this week, I think it's going to be all about getting out in front. I mean, you've talked about so much with Scheffler in the past, Rory in the past, of getting out in front. Mm-hmm. I think if Xander's not out in front, when I say in front, within 2 shots of the lead, because if guys are shooting 63 and they're 7 under on a par 70, and Xander shoots 67, let's say he lulls his way around and shoots 3 under, then I think you start to worry about Xander. If Xander's in that first round leader-ish kind of area, I think he has an excellent chance. But other than that, I think outside of a hot start, I don't know what I feel about Xander Schauffele.
Well, that's the thing. We mentioned earlier he's one of the horses for this course, and his good mate Patrick Cantlay is
Right.
the other. Cantlay's gone through 3 starts in a row twice this year. He did it with a T23 at Zurich, and prior to that at Pebble with a T11. But he along with his mate, their ex, are both horses for this course. Both of them somewhat in the mix. Cantlay more so than Xander in the end in the final stretch on Sunday. Cantlay's been an anomaly this year, an enigma. We don't know which one's going to turn up, but he has
Yeah,
where he's expected to turn up. And this is one of those places where he is expected to turn up. Is there value at 20 to 1 on Patrick Cantlay this week?
I think there is because Cantlay is the kind of player who plays well when you don't expect him to. And no one's expected anything out of him the last handful of months. We've been talking about Patrick Cantlay like he's not a superstar player. Guys, he is a superstar player.
Yeah.
He has proven for years on years, no, he hasn't won a major, but he has proven that he can win the random events, the signature events, and do very well at them. Just because he hasn't played well in majors is a misnomer on what kind of player this guy can be. I think just like any other golfer, it took him a while to get out of his little lull that he may have been in earlier this year. Uh, if I were gonna go in a head to head with Schauffele, Cantlay, and Scheffler, I might almost give the nod to Cantlay because he's the one who has the biggest chip, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And he's the one who probably, I mean, he's not on Team USA. Maybe he doesn't like that. Maybe he's a little upset about that. I think Patrick Cantlay is the perfect kind of guy who can get hot. Oh, and by the way, he's gotten hot late in summers before. If you didn't notice his run in the playoffs recently, I of all those 3 stars, I think Cantlay's game probably would be the biggest horse for the course this week.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I said, and you're getting value because, again, it's a guy who, I mean, he almost as a kid, he came out and shot 60 there, held the course record for a while
Yeah,
until Jim Furyk
exactly.
came and smashed it with a 58. But like he's obviously very happy in the area. Now I left the last top chalk guy out because I know you're very bullish on this.
Because I'm not going to shy away from it.
Very
Uh,
bullish.
I think you are too.
Hmm.
I just think you probably are more cautious with his potential injuries,
Yes.
is my guess. But I don't see it that way. I don't think Ludvig Oberg's meniscus, partial tear, whatever we want to diagnose ourselves, because we technically don't know what the answer is, though we probably know what the answer is. Look at his results, Benny. I mean, the only week where it seemed to be an issue was the only week he's missed a cut in the last, 2 months? And the only week he was not in contention in the last 2 months. It was a PGA Championship. I just don't see it being an issue here in the middle of June.
For me, it's look. That's a little bit of a concern. It makes you sort of be standoffish when you're someone's part of the chalk,
Yeah.
part of the short odds in pre-tournament factoring. But here it is with Oberg. I don't know which side of the fence he's going to fall on in terms of mental fatigue out of the US Open. He led through 36 holes and looked like a veteran performer. Looked so great. But then he fell away with his 2 triples, obviously one in each round, which is what did him in. He still played well outside of those 2 holes, I know. But I just wonder if there's going to be any sort of hangover. So for me, when it comes to Thursday's opening round, he is where my eyeballs are. Straight on Ludvig.
Okay.
And if he plays well, then he's going to be a absolute draw in draws and fades on Thursday afternoon. Whatever his price is, if he plays half decent and is in the mix, he becomes a massive draw.
Would you agree with this if I were to say the 2 bad holes, the 2 triple bogeys in round 3 and 4 were all because of the lack of experience on where to miss a shot in a U.S. Open at Pinehurst in specific, as opposed to maybe he just wasn't hitting the ball well? I mean, to me, it's 2 bad shots on 2 bad holes. I don't see that out here. I don't see the learning curve, so to speak. It's a beautiful course, and there is trouble. I'm standing next to this pond that we've been talking about in 15, 16, and 17. But it's not like Ludwig's going to let these little minuscule hazard details affect his game. I call Pinehurst trouble so much different from trouble basically anywhere else that you're going to play. And I don't see Ludvig struggling with that lack of experience when clearly He has played courses like this and played very well. And again, I think the only issue is that mental fatigue with not knowing what's going on with his knee. But I don't care about that because I truly believe he's hitting the golf ball better than anybody else in the world right now if Scottie Scheffler's not on his A game.
His mistakes at Pinehurst were compounded. That was the issue, right? Like he made
Okay. Yeah.
the error, and then this is where he was the rookie. Instead of taking a deep breath and being able to go, okay, bogey was fine, he then tried to essentially, fix it with a risky shot after the bad shot, and that's how you end up with a triple. Obviously,
And that's a lack of experience at a
correct.
US Open.
That's lack of experience. Now here, you still can't look. You need to go low, so you can't have a double bogey here. That's like having a quadruple bogey anywhere else.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying. Other than him teeing off the ball wildly right or left and ending up in a pond, but even still, he'll make par or bogey from that situation. He won't make double or triple. He'll be able to essentially potentially rebound if he does make a little mental error. As I said, I'm fascinated to see how he goes in round one, because if he's shaken at all, if it's not affected him, if he's not still thinking about those mistakes, then this is a chance for him to go out and prove himself again. If he is just a little off, just not quite locked in, then I could see him falling behind and having to force the issue, and that's where mistakes can come in. So again, fascinating week for me for him.
It is. It's fascinating for the fact that we're not going to see these guys until the middle of July.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure how many of them have committed to Genesis in Scotland.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're certainly going to see them at the Open Championship. We know that, but that's almost over a month away. I mean, we're not going to see a lot of these guys for a very long time, but we get them this week. We get them tired this week. The more I think about it, the more I think we see a random winner. And by the way, Ludvig would be random because he hasn't won a big event yet.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm just saying, Ben. Our RSM Classic counts as a win, obviously, but it's in the fall. It's not against the, quote, top players in the world. So if we're going to talk random winners, Ludvig would be a random winner. I just think you go down that list, you got the Ches Reeves, you got the Harris Englishes, you got the Keegan Bradleys, but then on the other side, you've got the Spieths, you got the DJs, you've got the Xanders, you've got Cantlay's been good here. Scheffler played good here last year. So I just go back to what I said in the beginning, is anybody can win here.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you if anybody can win here in terms of what bets you think are the smartest for people to make?
So perhaps, again, this might be the signature event where we're talking chalk here. It's majority been talking about these top five guys. But maybe it is a week that you have a small sprinkle at high, small percentage of units at the higher numbers, right? Maybe it is a week where you look to an up-and-coming star or an up-and-coming player. I know Matty Del Vecchio was big on Akshay Bhattia's number at 80-1. I delved further into that before my column yesterday and agree with him. I think that you get great odds across the board on Bhatia. There's other guys. Obviously, Keegan Bradley is the defending champion. He's 50-1. It could be a week where someone comes from, that middle tier or even higher tier odds because fatigue isn't a factor for them. They're just like, they want to win. They want to win. They have a bigger a chance to do so if some of the top guys aren't quite on their game. So maybe we do get an out-of-the-box winner.
And I think of the chalk, who wants to win the most? I think it's Patrick Cantlay.
It's who?
Of the chalk, who wants to win the most? Take Ludvig out of it. If we're talking about those three, Cantlay, Schauffele, and Scheffler. I think he's the one who wants to win the most this week. You don't agree?
Oh yeah, no. I think that you get Cantlay and you get Morikawa because of how they've been playing and how they haven't necessarily closed.
We haven't talked about him, yeah.
Yeah, so I think Morikawa is another one that might have a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Although, for me, he's better suited for when we get to the Scottish and the Open. I think that's where Morikawa might put the foot down. And like I said before, when before we went to Memorial, and I said, no matter what, remind me that Morikawa needs to be on my card for Memorial, where he ended up second. I'm going to say it again with Morikawa. Make sure you remind me at the Open, no matter what happens this week or in the lead up, Morikawa needs to be somewhere in your radar for the Open Championship. He's a former champion there, and I think that this form that he's been showing is eventually going to pay off for him. In the end, he could be that guy. Every year we have a guy in the playoffs that makes a run as well.
I know.
Hovland last year, Cantlay year before that. It could be Morikawa this year. Not a surprise if he would steal the FedEx Cup from Scottie Scheffler, who is so far in front that we already know
he'd have to win. I think he'd have to win at least two of
yes.
those events, wouldn't he?
We already know that Scottie
At least
Scheffler is
two.
going to be 10 under when it comes to the Tour Championship, and the others are going to have to chase him down. So the key now is for everyone else to try to get as close to him as possible over the summer before we get there. But yeah, look, we've sat here, talk chalk. We've almost said, yeah, here's some good chalk, but have a look a bit further down the board. It's a fascinating week. It's one that we'll dissect afterwards and go, how did we not think of that? But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, but mate, you're going to be bringing us all the action from the area, from TPC River Highlands all week, right?
Yep. Look at your top 20s is the last thing I'll say. I think look at your top 20s. You got to be 2/3 of the field. That's it. And find a guy who you like, who you think has a good number in the top 20. Because even if he's 35th, 40th after 3 rounds, he's got time. He's got 18 holes to get into the top 20 when anything can happen on Sunday. I have walked about a mile here, Benny, so I feel pretty good about myself. You can probably call it a day, huh?
Yeah, I think that's good, mate. I said we've given you the info on the chalk. We've given you what you should do. Thanks for joining us on Chalk Talk. Golfbet will be there all week, as you can see. Chris Brees bringing us the news as it comes to hand. Peace out.